I wasn't supposed to come back to Missouri. Not after what happened in Easton. Not after the fire. But the church doesn't care about your past. They only care if you're still breathing and willing. The call came through on a Wednesday. Unmarked number. Gravelly voice. They didn't even say the word demon. They never do over the phone. Protocol Revision 4. You're being reassigned. Case 1019. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Protocol revisions only come from Vatican authority. But the courier arrived that night. A sealed envelope with the new rules. Typed. Clinical. Off. Rule 1. Do not refer to the entity by its second name. Rule 2. A mirror must be present in the room, angled downward. Rule 3. If an observer begins weeping, evacuate immediately. Rule 4. Do not document the session. Do not record audio. I've performed over 30 exorcisms. Some of them left me with burns. One made me forget an entire week. But these rules, they weren't about safety. They were about containment. The parish I was assigned to sat on the edge of dead farmland. The kind where trees don't even bother anymore. St. Elira's, hollow brick and stained glass made brittle by time. When I met the caretaker, she gave me a curious look. Not fear, just fatigue. Her hands trembled when she handed me the room key. Then she said something I'll never forget. We always leave a silver spoon under the bed, upside down. Don't ask what happens if you forget. The room was prepared. The afflicted, a boy no older than 15, was bound to the old iron bed frame. His eyes were sewn shut, not medically, threaded crudely, as if to keep something in. I started the prayers. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. The mirror twitched. Just a flicker, not the glass, the reflection. Then the boy whispered, "Don't say my other name, Father." I hadn't said anything yet.
The boy's voice wasn't his. It had that layered timbre, like something scraping across wet stone. Soft, but wrong. And the way he spoke, slow and reverent, like he was savoring the moment. I tried to ignore it, focused on the liturgy. The old rites don't always work, but they give the mind something to hold on to. A rhythm stronger than fear. Adjuro te spiritus immundi, ut exeas ab hoc famulo Dei. But then, the mirror moved again. Not the glass itself, the angle. It was still pointed down, just like the rule said, but the reflection, it had changed. I looked closer, and I swear I saw myself in the mirror. Except I was already looking at the boy. I wasn't leaning forward. I wasn't. In the reflection, I was smiling. I snapped my gaze back and pressed the crucifix to the boy's chest. His body arched, bones cracked. Recche de Satana, inventore et magistra omnis fallaciae. His mouth opened too wide, his lips tore, and from within, a voice, not his own, echoed in the room. You're using the old words, Caleb. Those won't hold me. He said my name. I hadn't told anyone, not the caretaker, not the courier, and I hadn't worn my collar in years. Creak. The door behind me drifted open. No wind, no footsteps, just that slow, deliberate sound. I turned, and there she was, the caretaker, standing stiff in the hallway, eyes leaking tears she didn't seem to notice. She looked at the mirror, then she whispered, "It moved again, didn't it?" She started to cry harder, not like grief, like pain. Then her hand shook and she said, "I have to go." And she ran. Just like the new rule said, if an observer begins weeping, evacuate immediately.
She didn't come back. The caretaker, her car was still outside, keys dangling in the ignition, but she was just gone. I closed the chapel doors and locked them, even though the lock was more rust than steel. The boy hadn't moved, still bound, still blind, but I noticed the thread over his eyelids had started to fray, not tear, unravel. I checked the mirror again. The angle hadn't shifted this time, but now there were two reflections, me and something standing behind me. I spun around. Nothing. No shadow, no breath on my neck. Just the stale scent of myrrh and something else, iron and rot. That's when I remembered the spoon. I ducked into the bed, heart thudding in my throat, and found it there, still silver, still upside down. I didn't touch it. I don't know why, but something told me not to. I returned to the boy and continued the rite, sweat running down my spine. Ecce crucem Domini, fugite partes adversae. His fingers twitched. Then his lips moved. Not a word, a sound. The sound of a clock. But there was no clock in the room. Just the ticking, slow and deliberate, syncing with my heartbeat. And then his mouth opened. No tongue, just teeth. So many teeth, too many. And from that gaping maw, he spoke again. Do not record, do not write, do not remember. I stumbled back. My recorder. I'd left it in my bag, turned off. I hadn't disobeyed. But that voice, it sounded disappointed. That's when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. From inside the mirror, something was trying to come through.
I should have broken the mirror. That was my first thought. But then I remembered Rule 2. A mirror must be present in the room, angled downward. Not optional, mandatory. which meant it wasn't a window. It was a seal. The knocking stopped. Silence spilled into the chapel like ink in water. Then the boys started humming. A lullaby, simple, childlike. Baby's boat's a silver moon, sailing in the sky. I knew that song. My mother used to sing it when I was small. The boy, he couldn't know that. He couldn't have known that. I backed away slowly, hand trembling on the crucifix. That's when the mirror shifted again. Not tilted, lifted. Just an inch, but enough for the glass to catch my eyes, and in the reflection, I saw a mouth, not mine, not the boy's, a third mouth, just under the mirror's frame, whispering against the glass like it wanted in. Let me finish the verse. I turned from it, didn't dare meet its gaze. Instead, I focused on the rules. The church doesn't hand out scripture anymore. They hand out instructions. Typed, revised, replaced. I unfolded the second page of the envelope. There was a new addition. Rule 5. If it begins to sing something personal, respond only with prayer. Do not answer. Do not engage. I swallowed hard. Then I whispered the first line of Psalm 91. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. The reflection rived. A low groan filled the chapel. It wasn't pain. It was hunger. Then the lights flickered. Not overhead. The candles, the oil lamp in the corner. One by one they began to dim. And the boy, he began to speak backwards. The guy in Del can never come in light. Im would still hold you close. Im destand you'll never. I didn't recognize the language, but my blood did.
I stepped back from the boy, from whatever thing was riding his body like a marionette. The air grew dense, heavy, like breathing through cloth soaked in oil. I tried to continue the rite. Sancti Michael Archangele, defende nos in proelio. But the words felt thinner than before, like paper held over flame. They curled at the edges, and the boy's mouth didn't stop moving. I knew your mother. Her prayers didn't work either. The mirror shivered, not just the frame. The glass rippled like a pond disturbed by a single drop of blood. I closed my eyes and clutched the crucifix tighter. That's when I heard it again. Not the door, not this time, the bed frame. I opened my eyes and saw it. The boy's wrists, sliding free from the restraints, like his bones had turned to jelly. One hand dropped to the floor. His fingers curled around something metal. The spoon. The silver spoon from under the bed. He held it upside down, just like the caretaker said. But then he turned it upright. The air popped. Not exploded, inverted, like the pressure inside the chapel reversed for a breathless instant. The flame on the altar inhaled. The mirror cracked, just once, a hairline fracture, spidering toward the edge. A whisper, not in my ear, in my head, clear as thought, cold as winter breath. You broke the seal, Caleb. The boy rose, not stood, lifted. His feet dangled 2 inches off the floor, head tilted to the side, as if listening to something just behind the veil of sound. And then he turned to the mirror. His sewn eyelids began to twitch. The thread was coming loose.
There's a rule the church doesn't write down, not in any protocol, not even in the red files, but every demonologist knows it. If the eyes open, it's already too late. The thread twitched like a worm on hot stone, each stitch in the boy's eyelids, pulsing, loosening, unraveling with a will of its own. I should have run. I should have, but I was frozen. Not by fear, by recognition. Because behind that mirror, in that shivering fracture of glass and shadow, I saw her, my mother, kneeling, face hidden behind a veil of her own hair, praying, but the words were backward, twisted, like the boy. "Caleb," the boy said, voice too calm. "She made the same mistake." I reached for the ritual salt, tossed a line across the mirror's base, sang the closing line of the containment rite. "Claudite portas inferni et clavis tenebris abscondite." The reflection hissed, not the boy, the mirror. "She begged us to take you instead." The spoon clattered to the floor, bent backward like it had been bitten, and the boy's feet touched ground again. He turned toward me. His mouth moved in silence, but his eyes, they opened. No blood, no iris, just smooth black glass. 2 mirrors staring back. In them, I saw myself. Not now, not older. Younger, 5 years old. Hands red. Standing over something small and not moving. I had no memory of that, but the mirror did. It always remembers.
My hands were shaking now, not just from fear, from recognition. That boy in the mirror, that blood on my hands, it was real, buried somewhere deep, and now it was clawing its way back. The boy took a step forward, not stumbling, not possessed, intentional. Each footfall echoed like it came from beneath the floorboards. Thump, thump, thump. The mirror tilted again, just enough to catch my face, but not my expression, because in the glass, I was still smiling. Rule 1. Do not refer to the entity by its second name. But I had never even asked for its first, and now it was mine. Caleb Thomas Roche. That is not your only name, is it? I backed into the altar, knocked the sacramental oil from its shelf. It spilled across the marble like thick blood. The smell, sharp and bitter, made the boy recoil. Just a flicker, but enough. I remembered what the older priests used to say. Some names can bind a demon. Some names invite it. The candles sputtered, and for a moment, the boy's face went blank, as if the thing inside him had stepped away or leaned closer. I whispered a question, not part of the rite, not part of any ritual, just a desperate breath against the dark. What are you? The boy smiled, wide, lips cracked, bloodless. I'm the rule they forgot to write down.
It didn't fall. The mirror. It shattered in place. Each fragment held, suspended mid-air, like the shards were choosing not to drop. But the reflection kept moving. Not mine, not the boy's. The third one. The one that had been behind me since this began. It leaned closer. Outlines of shoulders, antlers, a mouth where the eyes should be. And then, like glass remembering how to be glass, tink, tink, tink. The pieces began to fall, one by one, each shard landing with the weight of a name unspoken. The boy collapsed, eyes rolled back, veins blackening like ink spilled beneath his skin. I rushed to him. Too late. No pulse, no breath. But his lips moved one final time. It's still here. The oil on the altar burst into flame. No spark, no ignition. It just lit. And in the rising smoke, I saw letters, written backward, charred into the air itself. E-T-A-L-O-O-T. Too late. I heard the chapel doors slam. From the inside, I was no longer in the church. I was inside the ritual. And the rules? The rules weren't to protect me. They were written to trap it here. Which meant the moment I broke one, the spoon, the reflection, the name, I'd become the seal. I wasn't an exorcist anymore. I was a lock.
It's hard to describe what it feels like when the ritual takes you. Not possession, no writhing, no voices screaming in your head. It's quieter than that, like being underwater in a room where nothing breathes anymore. The chapel blurred, colors dimmed, shadows thickened until they felt alive, and something whispered from behind the altar. Seal is flesh, the key is memory. I tried to move, but my arms wouldn't obey. My body was standing still, but I was slipping backward, like my mind was peeling away. Then I saw them. Reflections. Not just in the mirror, on the shards that littered the ground, each one showing a different version of me. One crying, one laughing, one with eyes hollowed out like burned paper, and one staring back. He spoke, without lips moving. You were never supposed to come back to Easton. My throat locked. I tried to speak, tried to remember why I'd left. But the memory, the fire, it was tangled. I saw the church, flames crawling up the walls like spiders, a woman screaming, my hands holding the holy text and doing nothing. That was the first time I broke the rules. Something cracked behind me. I turned, and there it was. Not the boy, not the mirror, the thing. Antlers like branches, a face like melting wax, teeth where its knees should be. It didn't move, it just was, and every breath I took felt like it cost something. Then it lifted one finger and pointed at my chest. The whisper returned. You're not the first lock, Caleb, but you might be the last. The thing didn't step closer. It didn't have to. Just being near it made the marrow in my bones tremble, like it knew the shape of me better than I did. The chapel began to rot, not crumble, not burn, rot. The pews sagged like old flesh. The air smelled of dirt and rusted mouths. Scripture peeled from the walls, the ink bleeding away on its own. I screamed a name, not mine, someone else's. I don't know whose, but it was the only sound that wasn't silence. The creature tilted its head, as if curious. Then it took another breath. The flame on the altar hissed in reply. The reflections on the mirror shards mouthed something together. Break the seal. Let us out. My body moved without my will. Knees buckled, palms pressed flat to the floor. And beneath the blood and dust and crumbling tile, there was writing. etched into the stone beneath the altar, Latin at first, then older, too old. The language was feeling, not word, and it pulsed when I looked at it. The boy's body jerked once, then again, and slowly he sat up. His mouth opened, wide and black. A sound poured out, not a scream, a dial tone. Eee! High-pitched, shrill, cutting through the veil between thought and memory. I clutched my ears, too late. Something clicked behind my eyes, and I remembered the other cases, the priests who vanished, the boy in Argentina who never blinked, the girl in Florence whose mirror cracked before she died. We weren't performing exorcisms. We were conducting tests.
Tests. That word echoed like thunder in a tomb, unholy in its simplicity. Not rituals, not sacraments, not salvation, just tests. I staggered to my feet, legs numb, breath shallow. The boy was still seated, mouth hanging open, that shrill tone still pouring out. But his eyes, they were watching me, not the demon inside, him. Whatever part of him remained, it was pleading to make it stop, to end it. I reached for the crucifix again, not to banish, to bless, to buy him a moment of silence. But before I touched him, the voice returned. Not the boy's, not the creature's, mine. Let him go, Caleb. You know the rule. It came from the mirror, one shard still intact, still reflecting. And in it, I saw myself, collar torn, eyes black, speaking in rhythm, like I'd done this 1,000 times before. I turned away, pressed the crucifix to the boy's chest. He gasped, the tone cut off, and for just one breathless moment, there was peace. Then the chapel shook, like something ancient and bound had just turned over in its sleep. Knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks from beneath the floor. I backed toward the altar, looked down at the carvings I'd uncovered earlier. They were glowing now, each symbol pulsing with heatless light. And I could read them, not with my eyes, but with the part of me the church never trained, the part they wanted to suppress. Break the chain, take the name, open the door. The boy's voice returned, calm, quiet, hollow. They lied to you, Father. You were never the one conducting the ritual. You were always the offering.
My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to deny it, to scream, to pray, to run. But you don't run from the truth that old. You kneel, and I did. Not out of reverence, out of understanding. I'd been walking in a circle for years, not casting things out, but calling them closer. The boy rose to his feet, unbound now. His hands dangled limp, like he didn't quite remember how to use them. His lips parted, but the words came from everywhere, from the walls, the mirror shards, the flame. One must always be present to hold the gate. I tried to step back. My legs wouldn't move. Tears rolled down my face, not from fear, but from relief. Because deep down, I'd always suspected. Every case, every rule, every dead priest who came before me weren't failures. They were installments. The altar light flickered one last time, and behind it, that thing returned, crawling not on feet, but on thought. It filled the room like smoke with fingers, and when it spoke, the walls shuddered. Ready to receive your role, vessel? I tried to scream. Nothing came out. So I nodded, and the creature smiled. No mouth, just a smile. The boy crumpled to the ground, empty, breathing, free. And the shards of the mirror began floating again, reassembling, not into a reflection, into a window, one meant to watch me. And I finally understood rule number 4. Do not record, do not remember, because what they trapped wasn't the demon. It was me.
Time lost its shape after that. Not seconds, not minutes, just a slow unraveling of now. I could still see the boy, curled near the doorway, breathing shallow, eyes shut. But I couldn't feel my hands anymore. They weren't mine. The chapel was gone. Or, no, it had changed. The walls stretched upward forever. The floor rippled beneath me like skin. And in the distance, I saw candles burning, but the flames were upside down. I looked down. My cassock was gone, replaced with robes I didn't recognize, symbols stitched in ash, gold thread twisted to form a circle of teeth, and carved into the altar where my name had once been, Vessel 1019, bound by will, sealed by sight. They'd cataloged me, filed me away like the others. A priest becomes a key, a chapel becomes a cage, and the demon becomes patient. The mirror shimmered beside me, now whole, but it didn't show my reflection. It showed rooms, dozens, hundreds, identical chapels, identical altars, and in each one, someone kneeling, just like me. Some screaming, some praying, some smiling. The voice returned, not loud, not soft, just inevitable. There is no exorcism, Caleb, only succession. A mark began burning into my chest. I couldn't see it, but I felt it, curling beneath the skin like hot wire. And behind me, the thing, my thing, watched in silence, waiting for the next priest, the next knock, the next rule. I was never the savior. I was just the newest door.
There's a rhythm to containment, not ritual, not scripture, repetition. That's what the church figured out. Not how to banish them, but how to keep them busy, keep them whispering, keep them watching, keep them hungry but distracted. Each demon isn't a thing, it's a cycle, and I had just become the next revolution. I don't know how long I stayed there. Could have been hours, could have been centuries. The chapel never aged, but the shadows did. They grew faces, some familiar, some that still had my voice. One of them approached me once, a tall figure draped in papal crimson. No face, just a keyhole where its mouth should have been. It held out a parchment, the same kind I'd received at the beginning of every assignment. Rules, new ones, written in red. But these weren't instructions, they were observations. Subject 1019 shows signs of imprinting. Time distortion persists within acceptable thresholds. Containment stable. Host compliant. I wasn't reading my orders. I was reading my own file. And at the bottom, one final line. Prepare the next vessel. That's when the door opened, not to the chapel, but to somewhere else. And through it stepped a young man, thin, nervous, holding a small black case, the one I used to carry. He had a letter in his hand, sealed in wax. He looked around, confused, but not afraid. Not yet. I stood slowly. My body obeyed. The robes shifted with me like they were part of my skin. And as I stepped toward him, he saw me. His lips parted. He whispered, "It's something new, something he didn't understand." He furtively looked at the case in his hand, and I knew that whatever was inside was the next chapter. And as I stepped toward him, he saw me. His lips parted. He whispered, "Containment Day 10 excretions. Recruit expected. Initiate protocol. Recruit intainment." I tried to answer, but my voice wasn't mine anymore. I was the one giving the rules now. He looked so much like I did back then, wide-eyed, obedient, hungry for meaning. And I saw it immediately. The parchment in his hands, it wasn't sealed in red. It was black. They'd changed it again. The rules, the test. Do not refer to the entity by its second name. A mirror must be present in the room, angled downward. If an observer begins weeping, do not record, do not remember. They were never for us. They were for the ones who'd come after, to measure, to monitor, to refine. The young man stepped forward, unsure, and I felt something ancient shift inside me. Not pain, not rage, permission. He spoke again. The mirror, it flickered on my way in. I said nothing. I couldn't, but my smile spoke for me. He set up the room like they told him, lit the candles, unwrapped the crucifix, checked the salt line. Then he turned and saw the spoon, still bent, still silver, still upside down. He knelt beside it, and I watched like they watched me. He reached for it slowly, whispering the rules under his breath, reciting them like armor. And then he flipped the spoon upright. The mirror pulsed, the chapel doors sealed, the light dimmed, and somewhere far below us, the locks began to turn. It had begun again, and this time, I was the one watching.
The first time always breaks them. Not during the flicker, not during the chant. It's the pause that does it. That moment when nothing moves, and the mirror doesn't just reflect, it answers. The boy, no, the new one, he leaned closer to the glass, and for a breathless instant, he saw what I had seen. Not himself, not a shadow, but a question, whispered without sound. Are you the one? He flinched, just like I had, just like they all do. Then he reached for his satchel, pulled out the manual, thin, worn, smelling of candle wax and forgotten prayers. He opened to the last page. Blank. Of course, it was blank. He flipped it upside down. Still blank. And that's when the writing began. Ink from nowhere, crawling across the parchment like veins, shaping words he didn't know, but recognized. I stepped closer, and though I said nothing, the room heard me. The mirror warped again, just slightly, and the air grew heavy with breath not taken. The boy whispered, "What is this?" But no one answers that question. You don't get answers here, only placement. The flame on the altar dimmed. The spoon began to rattle. And behind the boy, the old threads, the ones that once stitched my past, began to pull. He didn't notice them. They never do, until the first one wraps around his ankle. And then he looks down and realizes it's already begun, hasn't it? Yes, it had. And this time, he'd remember just enough to doubt it was ever real.
The spoon stopped rattling, not because it settled, but because something held it. Invisible fingers, patient, testing the weight of tradition. The boy turned too slowly. He could feel it now, that sense of being read, not seen, not watched, read. "What are you?" he asked the mirror. I remembered that question. I'd asked it once. I think we all do. But the mirror doesn't answer in words. It answers in roles. One shard on the floor began to glow. Another trembled. Each fragment held a flicker of the last vessel, of me. The laughter, the blood, the quiet smile. And now they held him. The mirror caught his eye again. He tried to look away, but that's the test. Not to resist, not to run, but to see it and still choose to stay. He reached for the salt, broke the line. Just a gap, just enough for it to notice. The wind didn't howl. There was no growl, no flame. Just a new sound, soft, dry, scratching. Scrit, scrit. The sound of fingernails on parchment, of names being crossed out, and one being written in. He clutched his crucifix, pressed it to his chest. Too soon, way too soon. It burned him, and the reflection smiled. Not at him, at me.
I felt it shift inside me, like a thread being tugged across the spine. This wasn't his exorcism. It was mine. The mirror pulsed again, just once. Enough to change the light. And suddenly, I could see everything. The boy's outline, the broken spoon, the parchment ink still wet with someone else's handwriting. But also, the watchers. They stood in the corners, tall, thin, draped in robes of memory. Their hands were clasped, not in prayer, in restraint. "Witness," one whispered, and they all turned toward me, then toward the boy, and one by one they opened their mouths, each revealing a mirror. No tongue, no teeth, just polished glass. And through those mirrors I saw others. Rooms, vaults, other vessels pacing alone, waiting for the next.
The boy dropped to his knees. His nose began to bleed. He was shaking now, not from fear, from rejection. He wasn't ready. And that's when I heard the whisper in my mind again, the one that had been there since the moment the mirror broke all those chapters ago. You don't get to leave, Caleb. You chose to stay. And now you choose who takes your place. The boy looked up at me, tears carving streaks through the blood. He said nothing, but his eyes begged. And I realized the final test was mercy.
The room was silent now. No creaks, no flickers. Even the shadows had gone still, like the chapel itself was holding its breath, waiting. The boy stared up at me, eyes wide, flickering between defiance and terror. He didn't understand yet, not fully, but he could feel it. The weight, the choice, the invitation. One more step, and I could pass it on. Let him take the robes. Let the mirror shift its gaze. Let the watchers retreat, content with another soul bound in reflection. I lifted my hand, reached toward him, and stopped. The mark on my chest began to glow. Not hot, not cold, just known. It was asking me, and in that moment, I saw all of them. The ones I'd read about, the priests who vanished mid-rite, the ones who went blind, the ones who burned. They weren't failures. They were refusals. They didn't pass it on. They contained it. You don't have to do this, I whispered, unsure if I was talking to him or to myself. The boy looked at me. What happens if I don't? I didn't answer, because the truth was, it keeps looking, and next time, it finds someone willing. I stepped back from him, raised both hands. The watchers leaned forward, whispers filled the cracks in the walls. But I wasn't praying. I was commanding. Claudite portus, obsignate scriptum, nullum transitum detur. The mirror screamed, a sound like teeth dragged across piano wire, falling back into the glass. The robes curled tighter around me. The mark on my chest deepened, then turned to stone. The boy fell unconscious. Safe. For now. And I knew I'd failed the test. But maybe that was the only way to win.
I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't pass in this place, not like it should. Candles burn but never melt. The doors stay closed, even when they're open. And the mirror still remembers. The boy is gone now. They took him. He'll wake up in a different chapel, with different rules, and a head full of dreams that don't quite fit. They won't send him back to Easton. No one ever goes back to Easton. The watchers are quieter now. Their mouths no longer glow, but they're still here, still waiting, not for me, for the next one. I tried to defy the rules, to hold it, to stop it, but rules don't break, they only bend. And when they bend enough, they become doors. My reflection has changed. It doesn't show the chapel, or the robes, or the face I used to have. It shows you, right now, reading, listening. Would you have passed the test? If you ever receive a letter with no sender, if the paper feels older than it should, if the rules seem strange but familiar, run, burn it, bury it, forget it. Because once you read them, you're already part of the ritual, and something will be watching through the mirror.